Ferrari is one of the most intriguing teams in the first day of pre-season testing, and after analysing some of the performance on the car, we can definitely say that they are hiding the true performance of the SF-25, with Hamilton being the fastest in the first sector in the morning sessions despite the Turn 4 struggles, and with Leclerc following up with even more competitive lap times. What should we expect from Ferrari in the next 2 days? And more importantly, did the team already start the sandbagging process? There is no question about it, Ferrari is one of the most attractive teams on the grid in the first day of pre-season testing, not because they have the number 44 debuting in red for the first time in his career, but because of several facts that point towards sandbagging. Hamilton was the 5th fastest driver on the grid in the morning session, although these times don't matter as much because the first day is more about finding balance and seeing whether the car correlates with what the team has been doing in the past couple of months. There are still some things that cannot be hidden from the public eye. For starters, a very positive sign is Hamilton's smiles and satisfactions after his first 70 laps with the SF-25. The Brit managed to post a personal best of 131.834, and while he was 4/10 off Antonelli, who led the morning session, Hamilton was seen extremely happy in the paddock, something that, for example, cannot be said for Lawson, who struggled to get into grips with the RB21. The smiles would be expected if the session went perfectly well for Hamilton, as it's worth mentioning that in turns 4 and 11 he had quite a rough time finding the balance of the car. In turn 4, that could be written to the gusts of winds that have plagued this section of the track, and before you say that every driver had the same issues to deal with, we have one fact that suggests that Hamilton might have had it a bit harder compared to the rest of them. Lewis is the only driver on the grid to have a brand new power unit in the morning session, which means that understanding and acclimatizing himself to the torque delivery on corner exits is definitely a process that he needs to understand to greater extent. Of course, Leclerc didn't replicate the same behavior, which might suggest a driver's preference and flaw in the first place, but other than that, the 7-time world champion has looked like he was struggling a bit with the rear end of the car, which is nothing new for him. In Mercedes, he had the same issues but wasn't exiting the car full of smiles and hinting that a lot of positive things are to come for the team in the following period. This has been further proven by one of the fastest laps that Leclerc has set in the afternoon session, right after the power outage has pulled out the red flag of the session. The rear end of the car has performed very strongly, which could be because of certain feedback that Hamilton gave to the team. And if you were to look at the insert of how Leclerc performs, you could say that the car was loaded with fuel. This means that the team was likely doing race pace simulations, but with a tad more fuel load than usual to see how the car would react to the increased weight and whether the balance would be impacted by it in the early stages of the race. And even with such a strategy, the SF-25 was still at the front and highly competitive with both of its drivers, even though there is still a lot to be seen from the other teams as well. Again, we don't want to overhype the situation and say that Ferrari is holding back a second or two in performance, but we are looking at certain behaviours of the car and the drivers, and we can't help but notice that the performance of the SF-25 will evolve in the next couple of days. As we talked about in previous videos, the feedback from the drivers will matter the most, and the fact that Leclerc was much better in the overall performance goes to show that Hamilton's words could have been implemented right away, which is a winning formula for the Constructors' Championship. Of course, it was to be expected that Ferrari will be one of the teams to hide as much performance as they can because they have set the target along with McLaren, and if you reveal too much on your first day, then you could easily find yourself in trouble. But we have managed to find several aspects of the car that are showing how much the car can improve in the following period. One of these aspects is the corner entrance, something we've seen the SF-25 complete very successfully and aggressively in Fiorano, and have succeeded in doing the same in Bahrain as well. An interesting fact is that the SF-25, although looking very good in the corner entrance and the amount of speed they carry over it, still struggles with the balance to a greater extent. It's the same issue that the MCL39 is experiencing as well as we talk, and the mid-corner tardiness of the car is definitely a phenomenon whose appearance we can write off to the load of fuel and the rear end performance of the car. But there is one very common fact that helped Leclerc's performance a lot more compared to Hamilton's. The rubber laid on the asphalt. With more rubber being laid on the track, the balance of the car tends to shift more towards the rear rather than the front, which is why the Monegasque driver might not have experienced as many problems as Hamilton did in this area. There is no doubt that the team is hiding something up their sleeves, because you don't want to show your cards in the first couple of hours of testing. You'd want to learn as much as you can without showing a lot. Therefore, the next 2 days will be pivotal to see how the SF-25 will evolve in certain areas, and one of those is the side pods, which have been deeply analysed by the F1 experts. Ferrari have worked on this part of the car a lot, as they have added a horizontal wing-like surface right above the side pods, leading to the interference phenomena to the design, unlike the F1-75 and the A version of the SF-23. This has a goal to increase the pressurization at the front and suction to the rear, with the area around the curvature under the shell logo likely to evolve in the following 2 days of pre-season testing. What will most likely happen here is that the flow should increase and accelerate under the influence of both the bottom and side undercut surfaces, which should result in increasing the local suction peak due to the positive interference of the car. Both of the surfaces are forward facing. The suction peak means that Ferrari is creating a significant amount of thrust in the local area that we just discussed. This has been exploited by many teams on the grid, as they've tried to use it for overall drag reduction when the execution was managed to be brought to perfection. If you look at the VistaJet logo area, there is definitely room for improvement, and it's likely one of the areas that will undergo upgrades in the first package that Vasseur talked about. This is yet another indicator that Ferrari is hiding performance in Bahrain, which is not something that should surprise us, because they are extremely good at it, and they are doing it with the sole purpose of defending themselves against the hungry sharks in McLaren and Red Bull, as well as Mercedes. Even though Hamilton has been struggling with the balance of the car and has further been 4/10ths slower than the man who succeeded his seat in Mercedes, he has been pictured very happy after the first morning session with Ferrari. I highly doubt this would happen if he wasn't satisfied with the behaviour of the car, and this has been discussed by the Sky F1 pundits like Alex Brundle, the son of Martin. When talking about it, he said, "Hamilton looks energised. He's looked energised all the way through the off-season. He's been off already at turn 11. He's got a bit of a tailwind on his way in here, and he's routinely slightly wide of the apex at turn 11. He looks nice and stable through the exit, just a little bit of understeer it looks like in that Ferrari at the moment for Hamilton. That's what caught him out a few laps ago. He scampered over the outside curb and carried on. Just getting a bit of a feel for the car, potentially a bit of wind behind it, and a little bit wide for Hamilton could be a factor of the car moving forward. They've done so little running before the season starts. It's effectively the first time for Hamilton to drive the car to such an extent in Bahrain. A couple of 100 kilometres around Fiorano is not going to give you a feel for it. With all this in mind, do you think that Ferrari is hiding a lot of performance in the SF-25? And more importantly, who do you think will prevail as the biggest winner from the 3-day testing in Bahrain? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to check out the video that's appearing on your screen right now.